Hi everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the drawing that we will be completing in today's video. If you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if that is something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, before we get started, the only thing that you will need to do is download the color palette and the custom brush. It's totally free. They are linked in the description below. So take a second to go grab that and then come back and we will go ahead and get started. Okay, so first things first, we will start by going over the canvas dimensions that we are using today. 10 inches by 10 inches at 300 dpi. The color profile that we're using is the second one on the RGB list. And for our layers, by the end of the video, we've used about 10 to 15 layers. So make sure you have at least that many available by checking here. If you do not have enough, you can always lower the DPI here to get more layers. This is the color palette that we'll be using. So let's go ahead and get started. We will start by going to our layer menu. So we are going to be on layer 1. We are going to grab the last color on the top row of our color palette. And we are going to be using the chalk brush to start under the calligraphy tab. And we're going to set our size to about 30%. And we're just going to draw some random lines across the canvas. Some push down a little lighter than others. Some go all the way across, maybe not all the way across. You can have some little curves in them. And this is just to kind of show a wood grain on our background. When that is done, we are going to add some more texture to the background here. So we can actually just stay on this same layer and we are going to grab the second color on the top row and switch to the grunge brush, which we're going to use a bit today. It is under the textures category to about 75%, and just go through and add some texture to our background here. Just kind of sporadically, no real rhyme or reason to it. And then lastly, to finish off this wood that we're doing here, we're going to grab the third color on the top row and we're going to switch to the flicks under the spray paint category. And we're going to set our size to about 25% and just kind of make some, we're not really going to draw, we're just going to tap our brush on the screen in little sections. And this is kind of like some flour being splattered on our wood background. I kind of left this upper left area a little more blank. That's where our plate's gonna be, so I just kind of avoided it. No, it doesn't really matter, but next we are going to add our napkin or placemat, whatever you want to call it, and that's going to be behind our plate. So let's add a new layer on our layer menu. And using the same color that we have right now, we are going to use the selection tool, rectangle, and then color fill turned on. And we are going to draw a square shape. So starting from the top left of the outside of the canvas, draw a shape towards the inside to about here. So there's roughly an even amount of space on each side, the right side and the bottom. And let that fill in. Then we are going to click on this layer, turn on alpha lock, go to our color palette, select the fourth color on the top row, and then this is where we're going to use our custom brush that you downloaded. This is the plaid brush. Select it and set the size to 100, and we are just going to fill in this whole shape with this pattern. And the size of the brush, the 100%, actually doesn't change the size of the pattern, it just changes the size of the brush that fills in the pattern. So now that that is done, we're gonna tilt this a little bit so it's at more of an angle. So click the arrow tool, use this little green marker at the top to tilt it. Make sure snapping magnetics are not turned on. We just kind of want to randomly tilt it just a little bit. And then I still want it to go off the screen, so we're just going to resize it to make sure it goes off of each edge. It's also a little bit closer to the right side than the bottom. There's a little more room down here, so we're going to move it down just a little bit to fill that in a little better. Okay, so next we'll start by adding our plate for our pizza to sit on. So add a new layer on top of our napkin layer and select this 5th color on the top row, this dark gray, and we are going to go to the monoline brush under the calligraphy tab at 100%, and we are going to draw a circle shape. Hold your pen down at the end and then touch your finger on the screen to make it a perfect circle. And then click edit shape at the top before it goes away, and we are going to kind of set this where we would like it. So I want a little bit of room on each side that's still showing the napkin, and I want it to go all the way off the top and left side of the screen like this, and then we will fill it in. And then let's click on this layer on the layer menu, turn on alpha lock. And then we are going to grab the 6th color on the top row, same monoline brush. We're going to do a similar thing, draw a circle shape, hold it down, touch your finger to the screen, click edit shape, and we are going to line this up on the rim. And we want to see a little bit on the left upper corner here, and then just make sure it looks pretty even all the way around on each side. And then we are going to, on that same layer, grab the 7th color on the top row and fill it in the middle. It might, and it probably will, fill in your entire plate like it just did to me, where it filled in the rim as well, but we want the rim to be lighter. So if you already let your pen go, just double tap to undo and then try it again. Hold your pen down while you're filling it in and then drag it to the left until you can see that color difference there. That just like decreased the threshold of what it's filling in. So if that happens to you, that's what you can do. Make sure that middle part is the only part that got filled in there. And that is it for our plate. So now we are going to start drawing the pizza. So let's add a new layer on top of this one. And then the first thing that we are going to do is similar to what we've just been doing, but we're going to grab this 1st color on the 2nd row, same brush and everything, and we are going to draw another circle. So hold your pen down, touch your finger to the screen to make it a perfect circle, click edit shape and kind of line it up in the center of the circle here, inside the rim area, inside the like shadow area, and then fill that in. It goes off the top of the screen a little, that is totally okay. It could go off the left side of the screen for you too, it just didn't for me because of how things ended up. But now that that layer is done, we are going to use our eraser tool. Set the eraser to maybe the hard airbrush or whatever kind of eraser that you just like to use generally as like a solid eraser. Set it to about 75%, and we're just going to start erasing little lines through our pizza. Hold down your pen at the end so it turns perfectly straight. And we're going to do 6 pieces, but as you know with some pizza, it's not perfect. Some shapes or some slices will be, you know, thinner or wider than others. So we're going to kind of set that up like this so that we have some variation in our slices. When that is done, switch back to our monoline brush at 100, same color, and now we're going to add the crust. And you know, the pizza isn't going to be a perfect circle obviously, so we're going to kind of add some variation to our crust, just kind of creating like wavy lines. And we'll actually do it for these edges as well, in between our pizza slices, because they won't be perfect. So we're gonna do this all the way around to each slice. You don't have to make it like super wiggly, but just wiggly enough to show that it's, you know, natural. Okay, so when that is done and you have all your pizza slices the way you like, the shape anyway, we are going to click on that layer on the layer menu and turn on alpha lock. That'll make sure we don't draw outside the lines. We're going to start recoloring the pizza now to add our sauce and our cheese. So first, let's grab this third color on the second row, and using the same brush and everything, same size, we're going to draw another circle like we do so well. Touch your finger to the screen to make it perfect, and resize it so that it's just a little bit on the inside. Leave a good amount of crust on the outside, and then we're going to fill in each of these inside the slice. If you have a little gap here, we can again increase the threshold when filling. So fill, hold your pen down, and then slide it up a little bit. Do it a couple times if you need to really get that filled in, but again, you don't want it to go all the way to the other side of the line. Otherwise, you can just use your pen to kind of fill it in as well if you have a little gap. So I'll fill it in all the way around, and then we are going to do the same thing that we did with the crust, where we just add a little bit of a waviness to the top of the sauce so that it's not perfectly straight all the way around. Okay, and then finally we will add our cheese. So let's grab this last color on the second row, the really light white color, and we are going to draw yet another circle inside. Hold it down, touch your finger to the screen to make it a perfect circle, and edit shape to resize it a little. And we don't want a ton of sauce showing, just a little bit. So make it just inside that. And again, fill in each of these on top. And our cheese is pretty white. That's because we're doing a Margherita pizza. If you were doing like a pepperoni pizza or something, which you totally can do, you can make the cheese a little bit more yellow. Not quite as dark as the crust, but like a little more yellowy, orangey. But yes, we're doing white for the Margherita, since it's mostly mozzarella. And then again, fill in these little gaps if you have them, and add a little waviness to your edges. Okay, all the way around, and then lastly for this main step here, we are going to add some little like bubbly pizza saucy looking flecks to our cheese. So grab that red color, again the third one on the second row, and we are going to switch to this under the organic tab, this snow gum brush. We have it set to about 70%, and we are just going to kind of touch around. Again, don't really drag your pen around, just kind of touch around on the pizza, making sure not to get too close to the crust. We don't really want it to be on the crust. So if any of your like little flecks do go up to the crust, let's just go back and grab the crust color again and our monoline brush, and we'll just kind of fill that back in. But that just kind of adds some more, you know, variation to our cheese where some of the pizza sauce might be peeking through. Lastly, we'll add a little bit of texture to the crust so that it kind of looks, you know, burnt in some areas. So we will go to our color palette, select the second color on this top row, or on the second row, and go back to our grunge brush under the textures category. Drop the size to maybe 40%. Yes, and then we'll just kind of lightly around the very edges add some of this and make it like more concentrated in some areas, you know, not so much in others. So that's it for our main pizza. Now we're going to add our toppings. So first we are going to start with the tomatoes. So let's add a new layer on top of our pizza layer. And we are going to grab the first color on the second row, or on the last row, go back to our monoline brush under the calligraphy tab, and we are going to draw some tomato circles. So they're not going to be huge, and they actually don't need to be perfect circles, so you don't need to touch your finger to the screen. Just draw a circular shape and then fill it in either manually like this, or you can drag and drop it. They look kind of like pepperoni slices to start, but we will make them look like tomatoes here in a second. Some of them can go kind of off the edge of the pizza. Some of them can be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. You know, we'll do at least one on each, maybe a couple smaller ones on like this one to kind of mix it up a little. You know, maybe just one on this one, one big one. And a little one here as well. And let's do another one. Okay, so now we are going to click on this layer on the layer menu, turn on alpha lock, grab the second color on the last row, and we are going to go back to our chalk brush that we used for the wood grain. And what we're going to do is kind of mirror the shape of the tomato outside on the inside just a little bit, and then draw like a squiggly line down the center. And that will be the start of our kind of tomato detail. And we'll do that on each one. kind of gets like wider when it meets, the middle part meets the outside. Okay, and then we're going to go to our color palette and select this first color on the second row that we used for our pizza crust. And we are going to draw some little seeds in each of these little empty spaces using the same brush, same size. Doesn't have to be perfect, no certain number in each one, just kind of lightly draw them. Okay, that is that for the tomatoes. So now we're going to add the spinach, basil, the leafy part. And so we'll add a new layer on our layer menu, grab the dark green color, the third one on the last row, and we're going to switch back to our monoline brush. And we're going to do some little leaf shapes all over. So we are going to drop the size to about 30%, and we are going to just draw some little like kind of teardrop shapes that come together like this, and then some that are just kind of like two squiggly lines that meet like this, and then maybe some that kind of arch and then they're kind of thinner, you know, something like this, kind of like little wilted, you know, greens. And some of them will go like on top of the tomatoes. Again, we don't want it to be too perfect in terms of like where they're placed or anything, or how many are on each slice. It doesn't have to be exact. So just kind of fill it in until you like how it looks. Oh, another one here. And then the next step is to add some detail to these. So we'll go to our color palettes, like the fourth color on the last row, and we are going to switch back to our chalk brush that we used on the tomato, and we are just going to draw a line down the center of each and then a few branching off to the sides, pretty small ones, and we'll change the direction for some of them. Like this one can go the opposite direction of this one, so it doesn't look too perfect. And that is it for the pizza part. So lastly, we'll add some little extras around the edge here. So let's add a new layer. So let's grab this dark green color on the bottom row, the third one in, and we're gonna stay on our chalk brush, change the size, make sure we're at about 23%. And we are going to add some little greeneries to the edge by just kind of making some little oval shapes connecting like this that go off the side of the canvas. We'll add a few here together, kind of varying their shapes and sizes. Maybe another little two. And we'll add some up here as well, like this. Okay, that's it for that. Let's add a new layer on top of it and then go back to our first red color on the third row, switch to our monoline brush. That same smaller size will work just fine. We're gonna draw some circular shapes. Don't need to touch the finger to the screen to make it a perfect circle. They can be a little different, but we'll make a bigger one there, a smaller one next to it. Let's do one here that's a little bit bigger. And another small one again. And let's add one up here, kind of going off the edge. And then let's stay on that same layer, switch to our lighter red, the second one on that last row, and go back to our chalk again. And we're just gonna kind of add some little like shines to the edges of our tomatoes here. Maybe just a few on each one, depending on their size. And then lastly, we will grab this dark green color from the color palette, the third one on the last row, and using the same brush, same size, we will start on the top of each tomato near the center and draw 3 little sprigs in each direction to top them off. Okay, and now for the actual last step, which is going to be to add a little bit of shadow around our plate and our little extras over here. So we are going to go to the layer menu, add a new layer on top of our napkin layer, but behind the plate. And we are going to click on the N on that layer and drag that up to multiply. And then for our color palette, we will select the second color on the top row. And the brush that we will be switching to is the grunge brush under the textures category. And let's have that set at about 70%. And the first thing we're going to do is just kind of draw a circular shape around the bottom of our plate, let it snap there. And you click edit shape at the top if you need to kind of adjust it so that we can see it a little bit better all the way around. Like this. Maybe add to some areas if needed, pretty lightly, and then we'll just kind of lightly draw just around our leaves and our tomatoes. Don't have to necessarily trace them or anything, just kind of add some shadow near them. And it's a little bit darker than I would like, so let's go back to our layer menu, click on the M on this layer, and then drag the opacity down to, oh, maybe 75%. And that is the last step of our drawing. So that completes our drawing today. I hope you had fun. If you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more Procreate tutorials. If you want to show your drawing on Instagram, please do so and tag me so that I can check it out. While you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching.